All right, everybody, welcome into another episode of Around the Octagon, UFC 310. We have Luque and Ryan here. Excited to talk some fights and get into this Pantoja Chiesa card. How you doing, fellas?
Doing good, man. Doing good.
Living the dream.
Living the dream, he says. All right, we'll start off with some news. There really has not been too much since we last met, but going into the last pay-per-view, the UFC announced that for these pay-per-view cards, they will go back to the old gloves, but they're still using the new gloves in the fight nights, which is kind of interesting. Luque, I know you wanted to touch on this. What do you think about that move?
Yeah, honestly, I remember hearing the news and I didn't really pay much attention to it watching. I think for the Jones fight, obviously John Jones said he didn't want to use the new gloves. He gets what he wants. But I did see something funny today. Someone posted a video of the Islam Poirier fight, and Poirier hits a mean left hook after a right jab, and it's like, wow, we were this close to having a Poirier as the lightweight champion if only we kept the old gloves. And I'm like, all right, like now we're pushing it, but I just thought that was funny, so I wanted to touch on it to kick off the pod. I don't know. It's hard to tell how much of an effect it truly has. You know, we're not in there fighting. But obviously there was a negative reaction from the fighters. So I'm happy that they are, obliging to the fighters and their wants, headed by John Jones.
Yeah, I agree. I do think it's a little interesting that they're still using the old gloves, though, for the fight nights. You think it's like a matter of they just spend so much money on them and don't want them just completely like pushed away? Or I wonder why they're only deciding to use the old ones for the pay-per-views.
I don't know, man. I mean, like, I know people were complaining that there's like a significant drop in KOs, especially with punches after the new gloves came out. So I think like when you're just trying to sell a pay-per-view, you need those high-profile knockouts, to get the job done. Not too many people, I think, really tune into fight nights every single Saturday. So, maybe if we can just get some traction going with the new gloves there, you might see them return. But for now, I think it's the right call.
Yeah, makes sense. All right, the only other news we have is Petr Yan got a big win over Figgy. What was that, 2 Saturdays ago? That kind of little bit of a title eliminator there. Where do you think the UFC goes next with Yan? Do you think he gets that rematch with O'Malley that it seems like he wants there?
Yeah, it's a tricky spot, right? Because you originally thought that Umar Nurmagomedov was going to get that title shot immediately, but Merab's also just like went from, I'll fight Umar as soon as he got the belt, to O'Malley talking shit on Twitter saying he won like 1, 3, and 5 based off damage, to, okay, I'll rematch you again in March. And then Yan wins, calls out Merab for that rematch. He then tweets, I'm down, let's do it. And then goes to like Umar saying, the only reason you're getting this opportunity is because of your name, even though Umar did just jump the ranks and beat Corey Sandhagen, which is an impressive win. So I don't know. It's like more like the bantamweights in shambles, because their current champion is sort of just agreeing to every single fight before the UFC puts one in front of them, which at this point is up in limbo, right? Because now you have the opportunity to do the O'Malley Yan rematch, which people are very split on. Merab kind of broke Yan in their first fight, so I don't want to see him jump back into a title fight right away. Maybe get one more high-profile win under his belt, and then take that Merab match, or maybe Umar, depending on what they do.
Yeah, I'm right with you, Ryan. I think you described it well, like kind of saying that weight class is in shambles kind of in a way, but it's like a good shambles. It's like chaos, but in the fighting world, chaos is kind of a great thing. There's a lot going on. I first want to just touch on, obviously we're big Sugar Sean fans here. Petr Yan 10-8'd him today when he said, I don't know, he's out for 9 to 12 months. I think he's pregnant. That was fucking hilarious. But yeah, I think we're kind of in a good spot. I would definitely expected Merab to be a little more active. I think you could really make a fight for any of the top 3 contenders, and I would tune in. And also with Forthwith Sandhagen, I think the next fight would be Figueiredo Sandhagen for 4 or 5 in the division. And you really could do anything with those top 3 guys. I think Umar is the most deserving. I think that's the best style matchup between the two. I don't want to see either really O'Malley Merab or Yan Merab again. But I am definitely surprised with the inactivity. Maybe there's some contract negotiations going on, but I'm hoping to get one of those guys in there against Merab soon, and looking forward to it, keeping that weight class moving, because there's a lot of top guys at any given day could beat one another. One of the best weight classes in the sport right now.
Yeah, I really want to see Umar get that shot, to be honest. I mean, I know some people are saying, okay, you only have like that one ranked win over Sanhagen, but that guy is so damn skilled and he can do it everywhere, and he's the only one we have not seen Merab fight. So that's the one I'm really the most intrigued in. Like you said, I'm not really too interested in either of those rematches for Merab. I don't think either of them were anywhere really near competitive. He kind of just dog walked both of them and did what Merab does. And I'd be very intrigued to see him have that style going up against a Dagestani. So that's where my mind's at as far as that bantamweight division goes.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, like with the case, especially like the Nurmagomedov, like Islam Makhachev, he beat, I think it was Bobby Green, and then got his title fight. But that's simply just because no one wants to fight these guys. You know, they ask for fights, no one fights them. Then finally, that's just how their careers have gone, where they just jump the ranks immediately because you get a couple high profile win, not even high profile, but like guys just outside the cuffs of the rankings, and then no one wants to put their number up against these guys. So it gets him in that awkward spot. So I feel like as a champ, Merab should probably just suck it up, agree to that fight, and just give fans what they want and just let that move forward and prove himself, right? He takes out Umar Magomedov, his stock skyrockets, and then it just opens the door for a bunch of other challengers that are just right there on the steps.
Yeah, I agree with that. All right, on to this card. Our opening fight of the night, we have Kennedy Nzechukwu at -600 versus Luque Brzeski at +400. Kennedy comes in at 13-5 while being 7-5 in the UFC versus Brzeski, who is 9-5-1 while being 1-4 in the UFC. Kennedy has fought some all right guys and has shown some KO power. How do we feel going into this opening fight of the card, Ryan?
Yeah, it's not really a tricky one for me. I think Kennedy's Nzechukwu, he fought Chris Barnett last, moving up to heavyweight. He was fighting at lightweight. His most notable win had to have been Carlos Oberg. He KO'd Carlos Oberg, and when they fought, and then since then it's kind of just like one win, two losses. The split decision loss to Ovin St. Preux didn't look really good. You know, at that stage in Ovin's career, you should be either putting him away or having a dominant decision over the guy. But I think moving up to heavyweight will be very beneficial for him, especially since he'll carry that power tenfold. Not having to cut weight, he's not as drained, and I think he'll be a decent contender in the heavyweight division. I got Kenny Nzechukwu by knockout in this one.
Yeah, right. I'm right with you there. Obviously, I think we were all on Chris Barnett in the last fight. Big fan of him. Obviously, the injury kind of didn't get a full showing, but Kenny looked good. He was putting together some good combos. He wasn't rushing something, even with the guy with the hurt leg, could still knock you out at heavyweight. I just don't really know enough about Brzeski here. I have seen Kennedy fight. I've bet against him and been wrong in the past. And like you said, Oberg is a huge win, moving up in the in the rankings at light heavyweight. I'm with Kenny here. I'm riding with the guy who's got pretty significant reach advantage, and he looked pretty damn good in his first fight at heavyweight. So I'm going with Kenny too. I think he gets it done. Obviously, heavyweights normally we take within the distance, so I'm going to take by TKO or KO here.
Yeah, that'll make three of us on Kennedy here. I think that could even be a nice parlay piece for us, -600, and it's not outrageous odds. You know, you throw three legs in there on similar odds. You have like a -300 in there, and next thing you know, you have like a +150 parlay, which I like. And Brzeski being a guy who was 1-4 in the UFC, like, yikes, man, you're really fighting for a contract. You've gotten knocked out by the likes of Waldo Cortez Acosta, who is not a guy who I really think about power popping off the screen. So I will also go Kennedy inside the distance here. All right, moving on to our second fight of the night. We have Clay Guida at +650 versus Chase Hooper at -1,150. Guida is a longstanding vet at 38-21 while being 18-18 in the UFC. Hooper is 14-3-1 while being 6-3 in the UFC. This seems to be like the kind of ones where we're like, all right, the odds speak for themselves. But Luke, we'll start with you. What do you think about this fight going into it?
Yeah, I'm a huge Chase Hooper fan. I think I was thinking about this earlier today, doing some research and stuff. I'm just happy with the way Chase Hooper's career kind of has unfolded to this point. I mean, he started off, got the win in his first debut. I think he was 18 or 19 years old, or maybe even 20 at that point in time. Then he went on a little bit of losing skid, but he fought some good guys. Moicano, Alex Caceres was good at that point in time. Tough veteran opponents. And then he makes the jump up to lightweight. I think he's won his last 3 fights in the UFC. Seeing he lost to Aljo in a grappling match. I'm sure decision was a split decision in that. Aljo's one of the best grapplers in the UFC. And I just like Chase Hooper's attack. I mean, I feel like he's getting better on the ground. He looks better with more weight on, and obviously one of the most dangerous submission guys currently in the UFC. In addition, Clay Guida, you got to give your props to the guys deserving. He's been around for a minute, continues to fight, continues to put on shows, so a lot of respect there. But he has shown, a tendency to get subbed by guys who are superior in that aspect. I think this fight definitely goes to the ground. I don't think Guida has the ability at this point in his career to keep it standing for 3. And I think this is a clear spot. Prop bet Chase Hooper by sub in this fight. I'm sure it's probably not good odds, maybe in the minus 300 areas, but I'm all over Chase Hooper here.
Luke, I completely agree with you here. I mean, granted, Clay Guida's been fighting for a long time. He's 42. He's starting to wear his age every fight he goes into. And yeah, Chase Hooper, after moving up to lightweight, looked phenomenal. His last fight against Vyacheslav Borshev, dropped him in the first round. Even on the ground, he's always just looking for finishes, subs. He was killing him on ground and pound, wrote him out for round 2, eventually found that sub, and he's been fighting good grapplers. Jordan Levitt, another good grappler, he subbed him within 1 round after moving up to lightweight. So I'd agree with you there. I don't see this going to decision. Maybe just because Clay Guida has that experience, to just grind out fights. They'll maybe push him against the cage. I think points-wise, he still loses, but I like the sub bet. I like sub as a prop bet here, especially given the odds are 11.50. You know what I mean? Maybe you could even double chance it, points or sub, but in all likelihood, this isn't going to see the judges.
Yeah, again, that's going to make 3 of us here. At the end of the day, when you see odds like that and you have a young prospect like Hooper who has shown his abilities, I mean, I love watching Chase Hooper fight. He's fun. And he's a wizard on the ground like you talked about. I just don't see a 42-year-old being able to fend him off for 15 minutes, and I think Hooper will find the sub within the distance there. So I'm going Hooper by sub too.
Before we move on here, I missed this talking about it before and researching. In 22, they actually faced off in a grappling match in which Chase Hooper subbed him with a calf slicer in the first round. So obviously it's a different game, MMA complete versus just grappling, but I think that adds to Chase Hooper's confidence going in here that he already knows some sort of weaknesses on the ground. He studied this guy before. So yeah, just even more so why I'm on Hooper.
Yeah, I did not know that. So I guess that's good to know from the betting aspect of it too. Makes me think, I wonder what the double chance will be between the knockout and the sub too. I know Hooper is not really known for his power, but after seeing him drop Borshev in that last match, I don't watch me throw on sub and somehow he finds a TKO somewhere in there. So it's just, kind of the luck of the draw there. But
dude, always gets dangerous when these guys are throwing ground and pound too. You never know if they're just going to continue doing that or just, finally the rear naked choke. So it's always tricky.
Yeah, 100%. He almost had that ground and pound finish in his last fight too, I'm pretty sure. I was kind of shocked that wasn't called, and then ended up getting out of that situation. But all right, on to the next fight. We have Michael. Jesus Christ, I'm fucking stuttering. We have Michael Chiesa at plus 100 versus Max Griffin at minus 120. Chiesa is 19-7 while being 11-7 in the UFC versus Griffin, who is 20-10 while beating 8-8 in the UFC. Here we have 2 vets battling it out. Luke, who are you giving the edge to here?
Yeah, this is going to be my first underdog play of the day. I'm going Chiesa. I'm a fan of Chiesa as I've been since he was up in the ranks. Obviously, he's kind of had a fall from fame. Did get a win in his last fight against Tony Ferguson, which obviously one of the guys that is a fan favorite, but kind of also had a fell from fame, kind of out of the looks of an impressive win. But if you look at even his losses, I mean, he got beat pretty bad by Kevin Holland, but he took Sean Brady to the decision, lost unanimously, lost to Luque, beat Neil Magny. There's some good fights under his belt, and I think that's just what I'm going to ride here. He's a great guy on the ground. He's got great grappling, and I think that's just where I'm going to ride here. Max Griffin, obviously a vet. I think if he keeps on the ground, he could definitely bang. But at this point, I'm riding with Chiesa as my first underdog pick of the day.
Yeah, Luke, I'd have to agree. I don't agree with the odds makers in this one. I think Chiesa should be a pretty, not sizable favorite, but he should be up there. I think Max Griffin, if he can't tit for tat and go with you at range, then he doesn't really have much to show. And with Chiesa's experience in grappling, just a notable edge, I have him riding this out for 15 minutes of good, solid grappling. Maybe he finds a finish in there, but give me Chiesa by points.
Yeah, I know Chiesa averages it's like 3 or 4 takedowns per 5 minutes, like a round, and you're going against a guy like Max Griffin who has only a 68% takedown defense. So I mean, he will get him down to the ground during this fight. If it were to stay on their feet, Griffin is a little bit more active, and I could see him winning rounds on the feet. But I just see Chiesa being able to get him down at least in 2 of those rounds and just stealing out those rounds and winning this fight by points as well. I could see some sort of split decision here, but I mean, those are kind of impossible to call out. But I'm also leaning Chiesa here. All right, moving on to the fourth fight of the card. We have Cody Durden at plus 130 versus Joshua Van at minus 155. Durden is 17-6-1 while being 6-3-1 in the UFC. The youngster Van is 11-2 while being 4-1 in the UFC. Ryan, we'll start with you here. Do you like Van as the favorite, and do you think the 23-year-old is able to pull this one off?
I do. I actually love watching Joshua Van fight, dude. He's an exciting flyweight fighter. I mean, he adds a lot of pizzazz to that roster. I think he lands something like he has the highest strikes landed per minute in the UFC, and he hasn't been here long. It's like 8 something per minute, like 8.3 strikes landed per minute. On the other hand, though, Cody Durden, really good wrestler. That might play a factor, but I think Joshua Van's like shown that he can defend a takedown to some extent. If this fight goes to the ground, Cody Durden probably edges this one out and wins by UD or by points. But I think Joshua Van should be able to keep this one on the feet. And I think that constant volume of pressure, just the strikes he throws, if it's great cardio, will either break Cody Durden or he'll give him the edge in points.
Yeah, right. This has been a tough one. I've been going back and forth, since I started looking at these fights. I'm gonna ride with you. I'm gonna go Van, the younger guy. I think you said it. You hit it on the nail on the head. I think just the output he's gonna put on in this fight might be just too much for Durden. As you said, he's got pretty good takedown defense, and Durden doesn't really have any submission attacks that he's really hit in the UFC. I think he's only averaging zero point 0.8. He's only averaging 0.87 submissions per 15 minutes. That's not a lot. So yeah, I'm riding with Van here. As you said, he's an entertaining fighter, and for a weight class that could use some more entertaining fighters, I would love to see him ride up the ranks and continue this little win streak he's on. So yeah, I'm on Van here.
I think I'll have to disagree with you guys on this one. I also like Van a lot, and I do like how active he is in fights. But I know the air kind of got let out of his tires a little bit after that Charles Johnson knockout, and I almost feel like if this fight drags on, I'd probably like to give the cardio advantage to Durden. Being that wrestler, they always seem to have that cardio going into the third round, and with Van's activity, I don't know if he'll be able to do that for 3 rounds and keep that up. So I kind of feel like if Van isn't able to get him out of there in the first couple of rounds, that the longer this fight goes on, I like Cody Durden's ability to get him on the ground and steal that third round. I see Van coming out hot though. I see round 1 going to Van, then I see the tide maybe turning midway through round 2, and I think Durden can pull that off. But I would say the fan in me is rooting for Van. He's just much more exciting, and it is hard to critique him being so young and knowing how big of strides you can make in between fights while just being 22 to 23 years old. But I'm kind of leading Durden at these plus odds.
It also is weird though. Van is very active. I'm looking at it now. He's fought 3 times this year, all within, like a couple months from each other, even after getting knocked out by Charles Johnson. So that's something to look at too. Like maybe goes into this one a little bit weathered. So that's something to look out for. Just like how much will he be able to survive after just getting punched in the head 4 or 5 times this year?
Yeah, I mean? 4 fights in 2024. That is crazy activity, actually. And then, I mean, that 5th one just being in November of 23. So that's 5 fights in a matter of 13 months, just constantly in camp like that. That cannot be easy.
Especially, it does worry me too. I know he's young and he's 23, so you have a lot of traction on those tires still. But it's always good, I think, to pace yourself in between fights because he's still developing his game, learning more. So it's a good point you brought up. Something to look out for.
That should be a fun one, though. I am looking forward to that fight. That's this fight card has a bunch of pretty cool fights on the prelims, and that's just one of them. But all right, moving on to another fight that we talked about not too long ago. We have Chris Weidman coming in at minus 115 versus Eryk Anders at -105. Weidman 16-7 while being 12-7 in the UFC versus Anders, who was 16-8 while being 8-1 in the UFC. I'm pretty much going to say the exact same thing here that I said a month ago, but let's start with you, Ryan. What's your take on this one?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, I had Chris Weidman winning this one, and I think now that he doesn't have to cut weight, I think this is at a catch weight of 195. So even when you're like 42, those weight cuts are significant. He doesn't have to do that. And he didn't look horrible against Bruno Silva, but he also KO'd him via eye poke. So not the greatest showing in his last performance. But like I think both these guys are on the back end of their careers. And give me the guy that held the belt, beat Anderson Silva twice. It's like there's not much more to be said about this one for me. But I do like Chris Weidman in this. And hopefully he retires after this.
Yeah, I am gonna go the opposite of what I went the first time. I think I went Anders the first fight. I'm gonna go Weidman here. Just thinking about it, I feel like the UFC kind of, Weidman's their guy. I feel like he's gonna be a little bit more prepared. I think Anders was the guy who backed out, right? It was his illness. Yeah. So obviously that I don't know if he had to go on antibiotics or what happened, and obviously you have a month to get over that stuff. But I think Weidman does have a clear path to victory on the ground here. I think this is kind of one of the more boring fights on the card because it's a pretty good card. But I do see Weidman, after thinking about it more, and then just like I don't know, time is the master of all. So I think I'm just going to switch here. I'm going to go Weidman. I think it goes by decision. I wouldn't be upset if, I might obviously take this fight, take Weidman probably in a big parlay, but I think I'm going to take this fight to go to decision. I don't think either of these guys get each other out of there. I can't see one of them knocking each other out, and I don't think Weidman still has the ability. Well, he still does for sure, but I just don't see submission happening here. But I'm going to go Weidman by decision here.
Yeah, I think it's like slightly telling that the odds actually like I know it's like almost a toss up, but they completely flip flopped between their last fight. Their last fight, Anders was coming in as a slight favorite. Now it is Weidman, and I wonder if that is because of the catch weight and whatnot, and also the fact that Anders pulled out of the last one. So I guess I'll lean Weidman too, but this is one of the fights that I am least excited for on this card. I will say that. I agree with you there, Luke. All right, on to the next one. We have a fun fight here. We have Randy Brown coming in at +185 versus Bryan Battle at -225. Brown is 19-5 while being 13-5 in the UFC, where Battle is 12-2 while being 6-1 in the UFC. I'm going to be honest here, boys. I am pumped up to see Bryan Battle back in the octagon. He's always fun to watch. We heard him on the mic after his last fight. But with that being said, Randy Brown is no joke. So, Luke, how do you see this fight playing out between these two skilled fighters?
Yeah, I think you hit it on the head there. This is a great fight. Definitely, probably for me, the highlight of the prelims. I'm super psyched for this fight. Obviously, I'm a fan of Bryan Battle since really he got into the UFC. He had a great post-fight interview in France. Just firing up his fans, firing up the crowd. With that being said, they're both guys on 3-fight win streaks. I think Randy Brown poses a lot of threats. I think if he can keep this at distance and use his jab to keep that distance, he has a path to victory here. But I think Battle has a little bit more of that, pizzazz behind his punches, and I think he gets this one done. I think he's on a hot streak, and it's kind of hard. It kind of gives me Moicano vibes. He's not the same character as Moicano, definitely not as skilled at this point in his career, but he gives me those kind of vibes as a good comparison. And I just like the momentum. I'm riding with the momentum here. I think the odds are clearly I think they're very well constructed at this point. I think UFC.com has Battle at -230. Great parlay piece. I'm taking Battle here.
Yeah, Luke, I have to agree with you. I think once Bryan Battle finds his range in this fight, that's going to be all she wrote. His last fight in Paris, he looked great. Once he found his range again in that fight, just volume strikes up against the cage, wilt your opponent away. I mean, the only thing you have to really worry about here is Randy Brown has one-punch knockout power.
Yeah.
But Bryan Battle, very good on the feet, very good defense, and I think he gets this one done later in the fight, into round 2, round 3.
Yeah, I also think Battle ends up putting away Randy Brown. Not in the first round, so I would agree with you there, Ryan. Sometime in round 2, round 3, but I like the momentum that Battle has been riding with. I mean, that press conference was pretty funny, dude. You're sitting there in France, and what was it? He was like, "Did y'all really think I was gonna lose in a fist fight to a French dude?" Like, come on, that was pretty good.
Came out Dude, he came out guns blazing. He played that, Jay-Z and Kanye West song in Paris. Credit to him there. And then as soon as he wins, he flips off the French crowd. The guy's a character, and I think, you continue that, he'll be a superstar in the UFC.
Yeah, like the kid definitely has swagger, and I'm excited to watch him presumably get the job done here against some qualified competition because, like I said before, Randy Brown he's legit competition. He's nothing to laugh at there. So that should be a very fun fight in the prelims. And moving on to another solid prelim fight, which might not be the most fan exciting, but we have Movsar Evloev coming in at minus 260 versus the former champ Aljamain Sterling at plus 210. Evloev is 18-0 while being 8-0 in the UFC, opposed to the former champ Sterling, who was 24-4 while being 16-4 in the UFC. Luke, I'll start with you here. Do you think the former champ is being disrespected as a plus 210 underdog?
I do. I think Aljamain, I mean, haven't always been a huge fan of Aljamain, but when a guy jumps a weight class after, dominating another weight class for so long and is being able to put on the performances that he's put on to this point in his career, you got to tip the cap. And I think it's kind of a disgrace he's not on the main card of this fight, or this fight card. To have him as a prelim, it's for a former champ. We rarely see that, no matter really what. I think Weidman was on the main event of the last fight card that he got canceled on. And it's a way less important fight. This is essentially a title eliminator, especially with Max losing to Ilya. One of these guys is going to probably fight for the belt next, with some implications. Maybe Volk gets in there. I'm taking Sterling here. I mean, I'm definitely betting a little bit with my gut here. I think Evloev is very good. I just obviously the Diego Lopez kind of has an asterisk with him being on short notice. Both guys have a very short amount of time to prepare for each other. But I thought Diego Lopez arguably won that fight. And I see similarities in the submission game with Aljo. Obviously, I think Evloev is probably a little bit better of a wrestler, and obviously the bigger guy fighting at this weight class normally and more used to that weight class. But I think Aljo's looked great, man. I could see this being, kind of a boring fight, but also a really highly technical MMA fight. I think Aljo slightly out performs him, maybe with submission attempts that towards the end of rounds kind of give him a nod in rounds. But I see him getting the win by decision here. I think this one's a toss-up. I don't think the odds are very indicative of the true competition that we're going to see in this fight. Although Evloev did look really good against Arnold Allen, I think it's easier when a guy is way better on the ground. These guys are pretty evenly matched on the ground. So I'm going Aljo. I think he's got great coaching. I think he's going to find a way to victory here and potentially fight for the belt, which I wouldn't mind seeing him and Ilya go at it.
Yeah, Luke, I'm going to have to agree with you. I think, and I like that you brought up the Brendan Allen fight. That kind of swayed me in favor of Aljamain Sterling. I watched that back, and in the third round, he got a little tired. And then now I think that with the new rules, with the hand on the ground not being considered a grounded opponent anymore, Brendan Allen might very well easily win that fight by KO in the third round. The knees he was landing, and then Evloev just put his hand on the mat, took advantage of the old rule, and it saved him. He got the timeout, recovered, came back in. I think he took Brendan Allen down for the last minute of that fight. But not a good sign, especially when you're going up a guy who has the most title defenses in bantamweight history. Former champ, has that veteranship experience, just as capable on the ground, maybe not in the wrestling department, but can still throw up submissions on his back, is dangerous on his back. And I could see a lot of sweeps, a lot of scrambles, and I'll take Aljo by points in this one.
Yeah, I mean, I just don't know if I necessarily see where Aljo is better than Movsar here. I don't see Aljo outstriking him, and I kind of feel like Movsar is the slightly better wrestler.
Yeah.
But with that being said, I can see Aljo at some point in some scramble getting Movsar's back and holding him there for a round and taking around that way. But I don't like these odds. I do think Movsar should be the favorite, more so as a minus 150, minus 160. So I wouldn't buy up to minus 260, but I do think he is kind of the better fighter no matter where this fight goes, opposed to Aljo. But again, I could see Aljo taking his back and riding out a round and getting it that way. But I have to lean Movsar here by decision.
Yeah, I think
Oh,
that's a fair take. I really think this fight's great. I really can't believe it's on the prelims. I mean, you look at the Nate Landwehr, is that how you pronounce it? Like
yeah.
Keep training,
that fight's
baby.
on the main card. The Kron Gracie Bryce Mitchell. Obviously, Bryce Mitchell is a fan favorite, but Kron Gracie hasn't really done much in the UFC in like 5 years. I'm just surprised that they didn't put this on the main card. It's getting a lot of fan backlash, so maybe we'll see a late change. I doubt it, but I just feel like that also has to feed the fire for Aljo. I mean,
Yeah.
fighting's it's a momentum sport. If you telling me a guy who's made millions of dollars fighting in the UFC, gotten pay-per-view points, arguably the best of his weight class ever, and you're gonna say he's gonna be on a prelim fighting for the title contender eliminator, that pisses me off.
Yeah, I do think it's flat out disrespectful because, well, you're a casual fan. I'll go ahead and say it may not find it that entertaining. I mean, I'm telling you right now, I'll have a bunch of fun watching those scrambles and those high level encounters that will happen in this fight. I think you're going to see a bunch of high level shit, and if you actually sit there and appreciate the wrestling and whatnot, which I know some people don't, it will be very high level, and it should be on the main card of this pay per view. I 100% agree there.
Yeah, I guess we'll see what this does to the momentum of the card. You know what I mean? Like from like a casual fan's perspective, I'm sure this might kill it. Maybe that's why, you're expecting this to be a 15-minute decision, a lot of grappling. And for the casual fan, that's not always the most entertaining. But it is shocking that this didn't step on the main event. Like I was completely appalled by that.
Yeah, especially over that Bryce Mitchell versus Kron Gracie fight, because I don't think I've seen a fight that was more boring than Kron Gracie's last appearance in the Octagon that we were at
Okay.
that Sterling Cejudo pay per view. Like that was one of the worst performances I've ever seen. I think so. Like I'm a little. I don't know how that's necessarily on this pay per view above this fight, but I digress. All right, moving on to the next fight. We have Vicente Luque coming in at plus 135 versus Temba Gorimbo at minus 160. Luque is 22, 10 and 1 while being 15 and 6 in the UFC versus Gorimbo, who is 14 and 4 while being 4 and 1 in the UFC. This one for me is a little bit weird to predict because I don't really know what Vicente Luque is coming out there, but we'll start with you, Ryan. Do you think Gorimbo will carry his momentum on and take care of the veteran?
I do. I wasn't too impressed with Vicente Luque's last fight against Joaquin Buckley. He just looked like he had slowed down. Like the age is getting to him. He's had some significant health issues outside the octagon. I know he had a brain bleed that kept him sidelined for over a year. And when you have significant injuries like that, and a guy that does have significant power like Temba Gorimbo, who's riding a 4-fight win streak, who has all the momentum in the world, got a house from The Rock. Like that story was incredible. I just don't see Temba Gorimbo giving this one up. And I think this is the fight where he makes a name for himself, and starts building up on his power in the UFC, like his superstar power. He beats a crafty vet like Vicente Luque, who's been there he's been in there with the best of them. He's beaten some of the best of them. And I think this is the UFC's way of trying to propel Temba Gorimbo into the mainstream. And I think he capitalized on it.
Yeah, right with you, Rye. I got Gorimbo here. Just like you said, I'm just worried about Luque. Obviously, that brain bleed. I don't know if it was from the Buckley fight, but the Buckley fight was not good for fans of him and especially him. Um, Obviously, he's been in there with some of the best. Um, Always seems to be right outside. Obviously, now later in his career, not as much, but right outside, like getting a title shot, fighting for a belt. I just think, yeah, the time catches all. Uh, Garimbo's got everything that Luque kind of has problems with on the feet. Obviously, this could be a different story if Luque has a bunch of success getting into the ground, but I don't really see that happening here. You got to be preparing for that if you're Garimbo as well. I got Garimbo riding his hot streak and getting another win under his belt.
Yeah, like I said before, this is kind of a weird one to predict because it really comes down to what Vicente Luque is going to look like. Like Gorimbo did get subbed by AJ Fletcher in his UFC debut, and it's not like AJ Fletcher is any sort of world beater. Let's be honest. But again, on the other hand, it seems like Vicente Luque is kind of just quit in a sense and just doesn't really seem like he wanted to be in the octagon in his last fight. But Gorimbo does get a little bit sloppy at times, and I think if he does go in for a sloppy shot of some sorts, I could see Luque subbing him. I could see Luque like sticking in a guillotine or something. If Luque isn't able to find a sub, I think Gorimbo grinds him out to a decision. But I think Luque subs a play here too. All right, on to the next fight. The final one before the pay-per-view begins. We have Dominick Reyes at minus 360 versus, once again, Anthony Lionheart-Smith at plus 270. Reyes is 13-4 while being 17-4 in the UFC, opposed to Lionheart, who is 38-20 while being 13-9 in the UFC. Luke, we'll start with you here. Does Lionheart have the ability to pull this one off, or does Reyes build on his momentum from his last fight?
Yeah, I am all over Dominick Reyes here. Obviously, his chin has been the problem in his recent fights. He's been knocked out a couple times pretty significantly. But I cannot bet again on Lionheart Smith. I mean, after the Petrino fight where he got that great submission, beating a guy who everyone thought was going to be a world beater, and looked great in that fight, he goes up against a smaller guy and Roman Duoldize or whatever. Duoldize, terrible with the names. And he looked terrible. He basically did nothing for 3 rounds. The smaller guy was able to control the octagon and land at volume, and I don't know how Dominick Reyes won't have the same success. I think Anthony Smith has a little bit of a advantage on the ground, but I don't think he has the ability to knock Dominick Reyes out at this point in his career, unless something freaky happens. So I think these odds are actually pretty correct here. I'm all over Reyes here. I think this is a great parlay piece. And I think it's about time Anthony Smith hangs him up. I mean, unless he wants to continue to kind of be a gatekeeper, which I don't really think he should be. He's had a great career to this point, a lot of respectable fights, a lot of respectable wins. But at this point, like, I don't know, he's pretty good on the mic, pretty good when he works for the UFC. Like, maybe that's just the way forward. And this is no ripping him, but I just think that if you're not going to fight for a belt, which he kind of still was in the conversation, for guys, especially at that weight class when, there was kind of not really clear guys to fight at the top and he was calling out Alex Pereira. We were like, oh, maybe that would be a good fight. Kind of Anthony Smith's got the edge on the ground. It'd be a good little fight to have happen. I think that's long gone. And I think Dominick Reyes is going to ride another win here. I got Reyes. I think I'm going to take him by knockout. I think he gets him out of there.
Yeah, Luke, I have to agree with everything you just said, except for the part that I think this is not a great parlay piece, simply because Anthony Smith has that. Not even Dominick Reyes' chin. I don't think, like you said, I don't think Anthony Smith has like the power to really do significant damage and hurt Dominick Reyes in that sense. But Dominick Reyes seems to just pull these upsets. Or not Dominick Reyes. Anthony Smith seems to pull these upsets just out of nowhere. I remember losing a lot of money on that Victor Petrino fight when he just got him in a gilly and subbed him in 1 round. And like that's been like the story point of his career. It's just like you expect him to lose against Ryan Spann. He takes him to a decision, beats him up on the feet, wins as a sizable underdog. So while I do think Reyes will edge this one out and possibly most likely KO him, I can't count out Anthony Smith, and I don't want him to be a parlay buster. So I personally will not be betting on this fight.
Yeah, I would not be able to stand it if Anthony Smith busts another one of my parlays, dude. Like, he just finds an ability to do that, and I think that's kind of why I dislike him as much as I do. Outside of his whole title fight thing that he always talks about. But I do think Dominick Reyes beats him up here. I do think Dominick Reyes finishes him, and I think Dominick Reyes builds on his momentum, which I think we all want. I think the MMA community kind of gets behind Dominick Reyes, just feeling bad for him off the fact that, that Jones fight and what happened there and then the losing streak. So seems like he's had a lot of bad luck, but I do think Dominick Reyes builds on his momentum here and picks up his 2nd consecutive win. All right, on to the pay-per-view. First off, we have Nate Landwehr coming in at minus 135 versus Choi at plus 115. Landwehr is 18-5 while being 5-3 in the UFC, opposed to Choi, who is 15-4-1 while being 4-3-1 in the UFC. This one, again, I'm a little surprised is on the pay-per-view, but Ryan, we'll start with you. What's your take on this fight, and what do you think about Choi coming into this one?
Expect a war. I'd say expect a war. Nate Landwehr always puts on exciting fights, no matter if he wins or he loses. It's just that high-paced pressure, and I think his last win against Jamal Emmers was insane. He got hurt badly in the first round and then just shifted the tides and finished that fight in the first round. So you never know what you're going to expect with the Nate Landwehr fight. He's awesome on the mic. He's awesome in the cage. And I think that high volume, constant pressure that he always puts out, especially within the first round, will get Doo Ho Choi out of there. I think he wins this one by KO. I don't think Doo Ho Choi will be expecting. I mean, he has to be expecting. I'm sure they've been training in camp, but like once you're actually in that firefight and you just have this crazy Kentucky psycho screaming in your face, you know, like not a lot of people are built for that, and I don't think Doo Ho Choi gets past the second round in this.
Yep. I got nothing to add there, man. I think you hit everything that I was going to say. Landwehr is just he's a monster. I mean, he's entertaining, and I think that's the reason he's the first opening up this main event is because this is going to be fireworks. And like you said, there's only so much preparation you could do for a guy like this. It's not like, grappling where you could grapple for 6 months to get ready for a grappler. This is just chaos. The second you step in that ring, he's going to be screaming. He's going to be throwing crazy punches. He's going to be on top and let you up and taunt the fans. And I just think this is going to be too much for Choi to handle. I got Landwehr by KO as well.
Yeah, Landwehr is chaos. I saw something about him fighting like his the beginning of his professional career in Russia, and it was like, why is this guy in Russia? You know, out of all people, that's just kind of psychotic in itself. But Choi has showcased some sick stuff himself as well. Kind of before he took that long hiatus after 2019, he definitely has power. I like this fight not to go the distance. I wonder what the odds are going to be on that. Probably minus 200-300 maybe. But I don't see this fight going the distance. I like that as a play. And I would go with Landwehr here as well. All right, on to the next one that we touched on a little bit before, but we have Bryce Mitchell coming in at minus 850 versus Kron Gracie at plus 500. Mitchell is 16-3 while being 6-2 in the UFC, opposed to Gracie, who is 5-2 while being 1-2 in the UFC. I'll say it right now. If we need something to boost up the odds a little bit, I love throwing Bryce Mitchell in here. I don't see Bryce Mitchell losing this fight, and I wish we were able to get it when the odds were like Mitchell minus 600 that I saw earlier in the week. But regardless, Luke, we'll kick it off with you here. How do you see this fight playing out?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I've always liked Bryce Mitchell. He's kind of had a tough little bout. What was the last loss? Was the Josh Emmett. He got destroyed by Topuria, which obviously now is pretty clear why that happened. Topuria is the man. But I think this is a clear spot for Bryce Mitchell to kind of make a rebound. He's still ranked in the top. I think he's 13 right now. I could be wrong. Is he ranked? Yeah, 13. I think this is just a clear-cut opportunity where he's almost better in every aspect. I mean, Kron Gracie's Gracie family, great on jiu-jitsu. But Bryce Mitchell's no slouch in jiu-jitsu too. That was his go-to before he started getting knocked out before he got there. So I got clear Bryce Mitchell here. I don't think Kron Gracie scares him at all on the feet. I think he's took enough time off to recover from the Josh Emmett knockout. And just like you said, I feel like Kron Gracie's kind of just going to finish his contract and then be done. He's probably training some of the best up-and-coming jiu-jitsu guys at some Gracie Academy somewhere. I don't see this one playing out anywhere in his favor. I got Bryce Mitchell. I think it's going to go to points just because I think it's going to be a weird fight, and Bryce is not going to try to overextend and like jump on something with the ability of Kron Gracie to reverse and get a sub. But I got Bryce Mitchell by win here.
I do as well, Luke. I think it goes to decision. I think Bryce edges this one out 30-27 every round. I mean, Kron Gracie's last fight against Charles Jourdain, all he really did was just try to pull guard. And if you're ready for that and you can defend that, you're not going to put on the most exciting fight, but you're going to win. And I mean, I'm happy with the time that Bryce Mitchell has taken off. He hasn't fought in a year, but obviously you need to take that time off. I mean, Josh Emmett, you thought like when you watched that fight, you thought, oh my God, Josh Emmett just killed him in the octagon. Like, so I'm happy with the time off that Bryce Mitchell has taken. The grappling, I don't think will be a factor too much in this, especially because really all you see Kron Gracie do in the octagon is pull guard, and against lesser opponents, that works. But with someone like Bryce Mitchell who can defend submissions from the back, is competent on the ground, I see this fight just being rode out for 15 minutes and clear UD for Bryce Mitchell.
Yeah, like I said before, I think this is a definite parlay piece. The odds aren't too ridiculous yet where I wouldn't throw it in. If it were to hit like minus over 1,000, then I'm like, all right, maybe it's not really worth it. But at minus 800, 850, I could see us throwing this in. I just don't see a way Gracie can win this fight. Like you were talking about defending pulling guard, and even if you were to pull guard on Mitchell, I don't see him finding a sub on him.
No.
And on the feet, it's not really going to be competitive. Not that Bryce Mitchell is, again, a world beater on the feet, but he's definitely a lot more qualified than Kron Gracie. There's a reason why Kron Gracie didn't want to stand on his feet in his last time out there. So I also see Mitchell winning this in uncompetitive UD, like a 30-27, where Gracie was really never in any round. All right, next up, we have a pretty big title eliminator here for the heavyweight division. We have Cyril Gane coming in at -370 versus Alexander Volkov at +275. Gane is coming in at 12-2 while being 9-2 in the UFC, opposed to Volkov, who is 38-10 while being 12-4 in the UFC. Ryan, we'll kick it off with you here. Do you think Gane will be too quick for Volkov, and how do you see this fight playing out?
Yes, I do. I think Gane moves a lot faster than most heavyweights in this division. Also, just I give him the edge in striking, and I don't see this one going to the ground. I mean, you have a points fight with Cyril Gane, you're either going to get KO'd or brutally beaten, just battered. And Cyril Gane's taking a good amount of time off. I guess the one thing that I don't even know where the heavyweight division stands at this point, right? Regardless of who wins this, because are they going to fight Tom Aspinall for the interim belt again?
Second interim belt title defense?
See, like
I don't know.
This is where it gets ridiculous, right? Because I don't know, John Jones, still the champ, world beater, GOAT, what have you. But now he wants to fight Alex Pereira, all this stuff, right? And if Gane wins, I want to see that Tom Aspinall fight. And I was hoping John Jones would have retired and vacated the belt after beating Stipe, but that didn't happen. But still, I still need to see that Tom Aspinall Cyril Gane fight before I think I see a John Jones Tom Aspinall fight. I know a lot of fans would disagree, but I think that's the fight to make in that division, and I think that would be the one to unify the belt. But we'll see.
Yeah, I'm right with you. I think Gane wins this. They've also already fought and Gane won it, so I don't. It really, I think it comes down to what Gane you're gonna get. And I think he's taken enough time off. Obviously, he's filmed that movie, but he's got a dub since his last loss to John Jones against a lesser opponent than Volkov, in my opinion, in Spivak. But still, I think Gane poses all the threats that Volkov has problems with. Volkov's looked great over this 4-fight win streak. I just don't see it continuing. He's the older gentleman in this one, I believe, right? He's got to be a little bit older. Cyril Gane's pretty young.
Gane's 34, Volkov's 36.
Okay, yeah. Not that that's going to play too much of a factor, but I think you hit it. He's just going to be too fast. He's clearly been working on the wrestling. I mean, his 2 fights that he's lost in the UFC have came down to wrestling, and I think it's just about what guy shows up. I did hear something today that Cyril Gane wanted to fight Tom Aspinall in November or something, and Aspinall said no, probably because he was filling in for that heavyweight fight, the heavyweight belt. In addition, why would you fight Gane if you're Aspinall at that point in time? Now I think it's up in the air. I think you hit it on the head, Ryan. That's the fight we want to see, Aspinall versus Gane. They've been kind of the 2 guys at the top of the division for a while that haven't faced off yet. So I think Gane gets this done, and then we're sitting here next podcast talking about what happens between those 2 if they do the fight or whatever happens with John Jones. I don't even want to bring up the antics right now. But we'll see. Time will tell.
Yeah, I was going to say, another thing to note too is Volkov and Aspinall already fought, and Aspinall wiped the floor with him in a round.
Yeah.
He beat him within like 3 minutes.
Yeah, that was that crazy armbar, right?
Like the lock-in sideways armbar. I
don't know. What is it called?
Straight arm lock.
Nah.
Straight arm lock.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to make it a clean sweep here for Gane. I mean, like we touched on, I just think he's just too fast for Volkov, and I think he's just going to kind of just pick him apart, piece him up. I don't see Volkov having the power to put Gane out here, and I just see Gane outpointing him on a way to a UD. Maybe he could find a finish there, but he didn't finish him in that 5-round fight that they had. So I kind of see it playing out pretty similar to that, and we just have a UD here for Gane, and then we're talking about what he does next and what's next for the heavyweight division. But I kind of know we didn't really want to talk about the heavyweight division, but we have seen Jones say like, "Oh yeah, I'm going to fight in 25," and I think Dana was saying he's not fighting anyone besides Aspinall, so maybe that fight is going to happen.
But It's like, yeah, I was hoping for it. And then John Jones said he'd fight him for 40 mil at the post-fight press conference. Like, that was like the number he's throwing out. And I just don't see Dana shilling out 40 mil for a John Jones, Tom Aspinall fight.
Yeah, I mean, 40 mils, 40 mils is pretty crazy. So, yeah, maybe we won't see that, but who knows? All right, on to the co-main. We have a pretty sick fight here. We have Shavkat Rakhmonov coming in at minus 390 versus Ian Machado Gary at plus 290. Rakhmonov is 18-0 while being 6-0 in the UFC, opposed to Gary, who is 15-0 while being 8-0 in the UFC. Again, this one should be a fun one. We'll start with you, Luke. Whose donut do you see getting taken come Saturday night?
Ian Machado, Gary's. I definitely think this is going to be a way closer fight than people anticipate. I think they have kind of similar opponents. They've both beaten. I think that it just comes down to Rakhmonov has finished these opponents. He clearly holds that over Ian Machado, Gary. He's got better submission attempts and submission completions, probably better on the ground. Machado Gary might be a little bit technically more sound on the feet. He's got great calf kicks. He uses that jab pretty perfect a lot of the fights, and I think he really showed that against Venom Page. Obviously, he took that fight to the ground, but he was able to stand and bang for a duration of that fight. I don't know if he has the ability to get Rakhmonov out of there. And I think when I found out this was a 5-rounder, I was just like, the ability to point fight and hold off and evade the killer punches and the killer takedowns and submission attempts that Rakhmonov is going to be throwing up in those later rounds. I just don't think Ian Gary possesses that. I think we'll see this fight be a title fight down the line, a rematch either way. I think both these guys have the ability to get the belt either now or in the future. I just right now in their points of their career, I've got Shavkat here. I think he puts on a masterclass. He's been out for a little bit. I think he was hurt after his last fight. He's been talking shit on Twitter. Says he loves horse meat, but also his favorite animal is a horse. Just a dog. He's just a dog. I got Shavkat here. I can't wait to watch this fight. This is my favorite fight of the night. Shavkat, I think he gets it done within the distance simply because it's a 5-rounder. One of these guys is getting out of there, and I think it's not going to be Shavkat.
Yeah, Luke, I have to agree with you. While I don't agree with the odds being as lopsided as they are for Shavkat, I think these should be a lot more even. I mean, like I said, both guys undefeated, both similar wins. Michael Venom Page, Jeff Neal, Neil Magny, and it's like straight so Steve Thompson, Jeff Neal, I think Neil Magny for Shavkat. So, very similar competition to where they're at that they fought to get here. But like you said, Shavkat's a finisher, and he finds a way. And I think if you give him 25 minutes as opposed to 15, he'll find some way to get that fight out of there. You give that man too much time, the fight's not seeing the judges. To be noted, though.
Is this his first 5-rounder? I think it is.
Both of their first 5-rounders.
Yeah, now that I'm looking at Gary's fights, they're all on main cards except for UFC on ABC, which he beat Daniel Rodriguez. I don't think that was the main event, though.
Mm-mm.
Yeah.
Yes. So, yeah, both guys about to see a 25-minute fight for the first time. I guess we'll see the implications of cardio. I mean, it's weird, right? Because in the striking department, it's like Jeff Neal had Shavkat hurt in their fight multiple times. Shavkat was able to fight through the storm, turn it around, and sub him within like the last minute of round 3. And then you look at Ian Gary, who's been just piecing guys on the feet, minus Michael Venom Page. His fight with Neil Magny, he just utilized low kicks. I mean, he's a smart fighter, stuck to his game plan, low kicks, had him so badly hurt, and just let it ride out to a decision. But then also got dropped by Song Kaman. So it's like, obviously, like both these guys had the opportunity to catch each other. I just think that Shavkat's a little more weathered on the feet and has a little more of advantage in the grappling department. So whether this fight goes to the ground or stands up, I think Shavkat has the edge in both, even if it's just slightly. And over 25 minutes, I think that favors Shavkat. I will be curious, though. I could see this very well go into a decision. I am worried for Shavkat's finish streak here.
Yeah, I'm happy we all agree on the fact that these odds do seem a little bit disrespectful. While I do think Shavkat is probably slightly better in all departments, I mean, very slightly. Ian Gary is good on the ground. He's shown that. We've seen his striking ability. But with this being 5 rounds, like you guys touched on, I do see Shavkat. I think he gets him out of there. I don't think Ian Gary's going to be able to point fight his way to a decision against Shavkat. And maybe if this even were to go to the decision, I think Shavkat will have the bigger moments. I think he will get closer to finishes, and that will win him rounds, where I don't really see Ian Gary pushing Shavkat to the point where it's almost going to get called, where I think Shavkat will to Gary. So even in those close rounds, I do think Shavkat will be able to have the bigger moments, whether even if it's a close submission attempt at the end of a round and whatnot. So if he doesn't get him out of there, I would still lean Rachmanov, but I do have Shavkat winning this fight.
Yeah, I think Ian Gary's best chance is rounds 1, 2, and 3. I think if it goes beyond that and he hasn't gotten Shavkat out of there, I think 4 and 5 are just going to be very, very lopsided.
Yeah, I don't know if I see either of these guys having any cardio problems, though, I will say. Like, both these guys seem like they're in good shape, and I really haven't seen either of them be, gassed out towards the end of round 3. So I do think that they will both have solid gas tanks and both will have the ability to go 5. I do think the 5-round fight definitely favors Shavkat here. As interesting as that sounds. But all right, on to the main event. This is another fun fight. We have a guy that I'm a big fan of in Alexandre Pantoja at -260 versus Kai Asakura at +210. The champion Pantoja is 28-5 while being 13-2 in the UFC, opposed to the challenger Asakura, who is 21-4, making his UFC debut. Ryan, we all know you love your Japanese fighters, so we will start with you. Does Kai Asakura have what it takes to overthrow the king of the flyweights?
If Alexandre Pantoja had a sketchy chin, I would say yes, but with the grappling and then just the lesser competition, I was all for Kai Asakura probably sketching this one out. I mean, obviously it's what the UFC wants. They want to bring a title back to Asia, especially that Japanese market, which is big fans of MMA, love MMA. That's it's a growing market business-wise. If Kai Asakura wins, it's huge for the UFC. But after watching the double champ one FC fighter Renner de Ritter fight GM3, I just can't trust these guys that come off the regional scene, especially if you're going to throw them into a title fight immediately. Kai Asakura has lost to Manel Cape, who I guess Pantoja has beat. But you know what I mean? Like, it's just the level of competition is too much of a disparity for me to side with Kai Asakura winning this one, especially throwing in the grappling, which is what he struggled with in Pantoja. Very high offensive wrestler. Will get fights to the ground. Will ride you out. Will throw ground and pound shots. He'll take that fight where he needs it to go, and he can withstand a storm on the feet. So
I will say I heard something about how the last fighter that Kai Asakura lost to actually beat Pantoja in the semifinals of Tough. I was listening to some live stream and I heard that on there. So I found that kind of interesting. But yet again, that same fighter was 28 when he beat Pantoja and then was 37 when he fought Kai Asakura. So, I mean, obviously completely different stages in his career there, but they have fought a similar opponent. But Kai Asakura's strength of competition is extremely weak. You even look at the guys he was beating in Ryzen towards the end of his reign there, and they were guys whose records in Ryzen might have been 8-5. And it's not like those guys are fighting high levels of competition either. So that just sketches me out way too much when you're fighting a guy like Alexandre Pantoja, who's beaten the best of the best and has been doing it for a long time. So I'm going with Pantoja here. I even like this as a parlay piece to cap off the night, especially since Pantoja does not get knocked out. He's never been knocked out, and the only way I see Kai Asakura beating him is by finding a knockout at some point in this fight, which it is a fight. Anything can happen, but I really like Pantoja in this one.
Interesting to note, I saw it on Twitter. Someone pointed out that most of Kai Asakura's knockouts are technically illegal in the UFC because in Ryzen they have different rules. You can throw knees to a grounded opponent's head. You can soccer kick opponents on the ground. And big disparity there in terms of just rule sets and the way he's been finding finishes. Things you can't do in the UFC that you can do in Ryzen that he won't be able to capitalize on, which has won him a majority of his fights in the past. It will play as a huge disadvantage, I think, to Kai Asakura.
Yep. I'm all with you guys. I think Pantoja gets a lot of discredit. I mean, definitely around casual fans. I think a lot of people don't think he is as technically good as he is, he's really good in every aspect of MMA. He's fought in guys that are really good. I mean, Brandon Moreno, really good everywhere. Steve Erceg, really good everywhere. Brandon Royval, really good everywhere. Like, these guys are top guys in the world, and Pantoja generally makes pretty easy work of them. I'm a huge Pantoja fan. I think he's dominant. Like you guys said, he has such a good chin. The way I see this fight playing out, I think he weathers the storm in the first two periods or two rounds, where he's just taking him down, holding him down, making him get out that gas tank. Because like you said, like, the only way Asakura wins this fight is by knocking him out. But once you get into those championship rounds, the knockouts become so far and few between, especially in flyweights. And I just see him weathering the storm at the beginning here, doing his thing on the ground. And I think he subs him. I think he subs him in the third. I think that's going to be my final prediction and something I'm going to take in a parlay piece. I just think Pantoja is like, we got to start talking about this guy in the GOAT status for flyweights. Obviously, you have Mighty Mouse, who's arguably one of the best mixed martial artists ever, but look at what Pantoja does. This reason that this fight is even occurring is because he's wiped out everyone in the top 10. I mean, I think he still has to fight he has to fight Kai Kara-France. I don't think they've fought in yet, right? Am I correct there?
No, I think he
And
still
then-
has a fight Kai Kara-France. I
and
don't
then
think he's
Alabazi,
beaten him
right?
yet.
Yeah, and Albazi just got worked by Brandon Moreno, so you can't throw
Exactly,
him into a
so-
title fight now. So it's
But
like,
those are really the only two guys. And I think that when you get to that level, I think this is when shit comes in, like when Mighty Mouse left, was like, all right, we don't need this weight class, which I think is crazy because I love watching these guys fight. I love watching the high level because there's so little room and margin for error at this division. But when you're this dominant, this is the conversations that happen. And this is why a guy can make his debut from Ryzen and he's fighting for a belt in the UFC on headlining a card, you know? So the last one, right? Is this the last one of the year?
Yeah, this will be the last pay-per-view of the year.
So I think this is a clear Pantoja take here. I think I'm going to take him submission or knockout. I think he gets it done. Just like you guys said, everything in terms of the rules, in terms of the experience, in terms of the technicality of the fighting here, rides in Pantoja's favor. I think the odds are pretty accurate here at -285 on UFC.com. I think that's an easy parlay piece and something that, we're going to be all over.
Yeah, I'm definitely throwing Pantoja in almost all of my parlays to finish off the night. But I am curious where if he does beat Kai Sakura, what the UFC does next in this division, because like we just said, he's already beaten everybody. The only person he really hasn't beat is Kai Kara-France, who I know just had that big knockout over Steve Erceg. So maybe that's where they go. But let's not forget that Kai Kara-France's last two fights before Erceg, he had a split decision loss against Amir Albazi, and then got knocked out by Brandon Moreno in the title fight. So it is kind of difficult for them to give the title shot to Kai Kara-France, even given that big knockout he had over Erceg. You would think he's still one fight away. Maybe, I don't know who he'd really fight again. Maybe they rematch Moreno after his win. But I am curious to see what the division does next after this fight, and if you guys have any takes on that.
it's hard to say, right? I know Brandon Royval just had a huge win too. I'm blanking on who he just fought. So, and when he won, everyone was saying he's right there again for a title shot. So you still have like these guys that would be a trilogy fight in which they both lost between Brandon Moreno and Brandon Royval fighting Pantoja again. It'd be they'd be 0-2 in a trilogy fight if they run those back.
Royval beat Tatsui Taira, and that was after he beat
Yeah.
Moreno. So he beat Moreno and then Tatsui Taira. So
Exactly.
But
So,
both by split decision, so it's like
yeah, a
not
little dicey
dominating, like.
And how many times has he fought Pantoja? Has it only been once?
No, he's
Twice.
fought Pantoja
Isn't
twice. He's
twice?
lost twice to Pantoja. I think it's got to be Kai Kara-France. I just think that's the only one to make. Even though he lost to Albazi, lost to Moreno. Like, I don't know. I think that's who you have to make it happen.
yeah, and I think if
Yeah.
you're going to give Steve Erceg a title fight after in his third fight in the UFC, I don't know how you can argue against Kai Kara-France for the UFC, and he's asking for that title fight, especially since he hasn't fought him yet. It's like you push number 10 up to fight this guy, and you just brought a dude off of Ryzen to fight this guy for a title in his UFC debut. So
Yeah.
I wouldn't be shocked if Kai gets that next fight, and if he does, I still have Pantoja beating Kai Kara-France as well. So I think we're going to see more of Pantoja, and he's going to be dominant for a long time. In terms of fresh blood in the flyweight division, we're just going to have to see what happens. I mean, we have Joshua Van and Cody Durden fighting. I don't know if Cody Durden's ranked, but I know Charles Johnson just snuck his way up into the rankings. He's riding like a 4 or 5 fight win streak, if I'm not wrong. Finishing opponents, putting on high level fights. It's up in the air, right? What they do with that division. I mean, some guys are just gonna have to start jumping the gun, and I think we're gonna see a lot of these number 10 through 15 guys start fighting the 4 through 5, 3, 6, and even with Tatsuro Taira, right? Say Kai Asakura wins, I guarantee they push that. I guarantee they push Tatsuro Taira to fight someone like Amir Albazi and then just immediately give him a title fight. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it's so weird, but there's so many ways they can go with this now, especially if Kai Asakura wins and even if Pantoja defends his belt. I don't think you'll see a trilogy. I think Moreno needs to get one more win. I think Royval can sit out for a little bit and maybe be a backup replacement, or maybe talk his way into a trilogy fight now with the 2 wins he's had. But
yeah,
there will be no shortage of action in the flyweight division.
I mean, at what point can
next year?
Sorry for cutting in here. At what point can Pantoja start thinking about moving up? I saw something on like Instagram that was like apparently the UFC was thinking about moving him up to fight O'Malley if O'Malley won. O'Malley commented on that post, "LOL, this is cap." So who knows there? But when is he in position to move up? Like I don't really see him faring too well at bantamweight, to be honest. But he's beating everybody, and if he gets the job done here, like what else does he have at this division?
I think it comes down to Merab. If Merab wins another fight or 2 and keeps that belt, then you make that fight happen. But right now, I think he just stays and dominates the flyweight division. Plus, he is 34, so no matter, like we've been kind of my theme of the podcast today has been like time is the master of all. It catches up to all. Like he's 34 years old. How long can you keep a 25-minute pace where you're fighting all these belts for 25 minutes? Like it's going to get to you at some point. Obviously, he does take decent time off. He's fighting around twice a year, I think. But eventually, we're going to run out of opponents, and someone's going to catch him, and it's going to suck to see. But that's the story.
Yeah, definitely. I also saw something relating to Kai Sakura where he has like more views. He has like double the amount of views on YouTube, or he has more views on YouTube than Sean O'Malley has, and half the amount of posts was the statistic. So you got to know that the UFC is pushing for Kai Sakura to somehow get this belt and just pump out views because he could be a little revenue machine for the UFC down at that division, which you don't really see very often. So it would be big for the UFC if Kai Sakura is able to pull this one off. But all right, everybody. Well, I want to say thank you all for listening. Drop a like, maybe a subscribe if you enjoyed the listen, and hopefully we all make some money come Saturday night.
Yep, we'll have the plays out later in this week. Obviously, this is an early pod. Should be out probably tomorrow, Wednesday. So it gives us a little time to let the odds settle. There'll be some late money coming in. Hopefully, we'll get some better lines. Put a little parlay out there. We'll do a little safe parlay and a little risky parlay. We've been cold recently, but all streaks, good and bad, come to an end. So.